If a client wants to reduce scope by working with you to do some of the steps like demo, how do you handle and negotiate that? I just don't think there's a tremendous amount of value in doing that. Doing something to save a couple $100 or $1,000 ends up biting you in the butt. What's up, guys? It is Coffee Break number 25. Welcome back. Just a quick reminder, if you guys have questions, make sure you drop them in the comments below. Each week we take a handful of those, try to answer as many as possible. Also, make sure you're staying tuned to our site visit. That's the live kind of GoPro footage of once a week hitting one of our job sites, getting in depth with the details. And of course, make sure you're following us on Instagram at NSBuilders, and for more behind the scenes at NSB Video. And on there, you can see the entire team as they're tagged. You can follow along those accounts as well. Got a couple questions we're going to get into, so let's get into it now. You mentioned in the podcast you're working with a business coach. He's talking about the Modern Craftsman podcast. I have recently started to work with one myself, and I think it's the best thing I've ever done. I'd really like to know why you decided to work with one and how it's helped you. It's a great question because I feel as though I'm not alone in thinking way back when, before I decided to work with one, that I probably am not the only one that feels as though I don't need a coach. I know what I'm doing, or I don't need someone telling me to, do something differently or hold me accountable. I built this business. I can do this. I don't need anyone's help. We get into this ego-driven mindset, and it's weird because I think it was recently, it might have even been on that podcast that we talked about it. It's like, think about pro athletes. They all have coaches, and they're a great athlete, but they're an even better athlete because they have a coach. And actually they have, and I'm speaking about sports because I'm not a sports guy. Sorry, guys. But they have multiple coaches. They have, different coaches for different things. And that's really, when I realized that I love what I do. I love building this business. I love, building homes and building relationships and all of that. But why not work with someone that can make me better? And that's exactly what I came to the conclusion is, if I have a business coach, it will hold me accountable, but it will also help me learn different systems and different processes and, kind of navigate my way through building this business to what I want, and having someone else kind of thinking about big picture, because I'm communicating it. Someone can say, what's your goal 3 years from now? What's your ultimate goal? Well, I want to build $8 million homes. Well, having someone write that down and then figure out and then walk you through like what it's going to take to build $8 million homes when you're building $1 million homes now, it's like, now you're working with someone that's helping you carve that path. So, beyond that, I think, the second part of that question was, how has it helped me? That's exactly what it's done, is really just allowed me to understand the steps it takes to get to the point that I want. And even more so when it's like live, like, hey, I give them a call. It's like, hey, this is the issue I'm dealing with right now. Let's hop on the phone. Let's walk through it. Let me understand your side of it. Let me understand how it's impacting your business. Let's put a plan together for the next 10 days to get through this. And having someone that's kind of removed from the day-to-day to bounce things off, it's accountability, but it's also in the sense that like they don't feel bad. And I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it's like they're just going to be right to the point, direct, and it's so helpful because there's, I think, so much emotion goes into what we do, and we often times get caught up in it. It's like when someone leaves, or you have to fire someone. Like, there's so much emotion in that, where sometimes that impacts the decision making, or that you second guess what's going on, or you question whether or not you're making the right decision. It's like, well, someone else removed from that situation can bring a lot of fact to the table and realize like, hey, listen, it does suck. These are the things that suck about it. This is how it's going to impact your business. This is how it's going to be good for your business, bad for your business. Bring all those facts and then help you make really thoughtful and well, thought out decisions. And that's really what it came down to. And just knowing that I wanted to constantly refine who I was as a business owner, thus refine my business. Doing so with a coach was going to allow me to do that at a much faster pace than me essentially navigating blind and making a bunch of mistakes along the way. Second question is, however, when a client starts a bidding battle between contractors, how do you handle that? Do you talk to the other contractors? How do you negotiate with the client on T&M pricing? Not sure if this was covered. If they're going to start a bidding battle between contractors, I think, let's pretend I didn't know that I was going into this project, that didn't know I was bidding against another builder, and I found out. I would have just a real conversation with the client, just explaining, like, listen, we want to be chosen based on who we are, the relationship, the process in which we're selling, not, a bidding battle from price. Now, you can argue saying, well, price has a lot to do with it. Yes, but you have to understand that, is it apples to apples? Is the cost consideration the absolute top priority? And you have to kind of ask yourself, well, am I trying to be a builder that is the most, inexpensive? If am I trying to go after the clients that want to spend the least amount of money? There's businesses that do that, but for me, that's not who we are. We're expensive and we're slow because we want to take the time necessary to deliver a really quality product. So with longer time spent on a project, thus that equals more money, right? So if I were to find that out, I would just have a real conversation, just explain, hey, this is our process. If you're looking to be, to hire the cheapest guy, we're just not the right person for you. And that's no harm, no foul. That's good by you, and that's good to not waste the client's time, because otherwise you're just going to spin your wheels only not to get the job. And the client's going to look at all that work you did and not think anything of it because it's over their budget. So really, I just have a real conversation. And if I went into it knowing that, same thing, I would just explain, like, up front before I put any work into it, that this just isn't the right fit for us. I've never reached out to any of the other contractors. There's definitely been times where we've been in a bid situation with other contractors, and it wasn't necessarily price driven. There was a lot of categories, who was the right fit, what their portfolio looked like, et cetera, and we typically won't bid a lot of work, but for certain projects, it might be to a caliber that we really want to be part of and be considered. So we'll put that work in, and I think that's just case by case, and I don't think it needs to be so black and white. I think, I don't want to mislead anyone saying that we don't bid work or be really proud about the fact that, oh yeah, we never bid projects. People hire us because of who we are. There are opportunities that come across our plate that we say, this one would be worth, putting a little skin in the game and seeing if we can get it, because maybe it's, to a tier that we haven't built before. So don't get too caught up in the fact that if you feel as though it might be a good fit and this would be a really great opportunity for you, then consider it. I mean, I don't think there's any foul in doing that. As far as negotiating time and material, I'll be honest, I would prefer to do fixed cost. We just don't ever have a design that is thorough enough to be a fixed cost. We approach, go back to one of our videos talking about cost plus, but cost plus, T&M, very similar. And I mean that because T&M is really time and material. You set up time is considered a rate at which you're billing out per hour. Cost plus is actually cost. So if you're paying someone X amount, you're billing out X amount. So that's the tricky part there. Cost plus can be confused for time and material, and vice versa. But it really, time and material is setting an hourly rate plus your material cost, and that's how you're billing. Cost plus is going to be the actual cost of what it costs to do that job, and then your plus is your fee. Negotiating it, just explaining the process, the transparency, and explaining this is the best way to approach this project because we don't have all the details. But for us, going back to our pre-construction video, we talk about like how we try to get that budget as accurate as possible before we start the job, so it doesn't just become this like T&M slip every single week. If a client wants to reduce scope by working with you to do some of the steps like demo, provide their own materials if they're vetted by a general contractor, or some non-essential safe labor, how do you handle and negotiate that? Great question. I just don't think there's a tremendous amount of value in doing that. Obviously, it depends on the scale of things, but I think about a bathroom. If you're going to gut the bathroom for me and save me from hiring a demolition contractor, sure, there's the slight chance that you guys might demo in a way that's safe and has prepared it for us and not cause more damage that we then have to fix. Are you getting all of the nails and the screws out of all the studs after you rip all the drywall off the wall? Are you, denailing the subfloor? Are you removing the subfloor? I feel like typically doing something to save a couple $100 or $1,000 ends up biting you in the butt later on. And, but it really depends on the scale of it. It's like, hey, if someone says, hey, you know what, we're going to build a new house, we got to rip this house down, I'll handle the demo, I'll get the house out of here. That might be an opportunity. You save 20 grand. But, when I show up on site, I got to expect that it got to the same point that it would have got if I had brought my site guy in to crunch it up and get it out of there. Was the foundation removed? Did we clean the bottom of the hole? There's certainly opportunity. Most of the time I don't recommend it. The other one that always comes up is, we'll do the painting. For us, that's just a no, because we put so much effort into leading up to paint, and we work with great painters that make our work look great because we're bringing our best to the table, so they get to do their best. And not saying that your paint job isn't going to be great. It's just, you hired us for a process. You hired us because you saw something on our social media or our website and really, really liked it. And if you want the product that we're going to do for you to be in line with what we've put out in other areas that you've seen, that's why you've hired us, right? You've seen the work that we do. You're impressed by it. You want that for yourself. You have to let us deliver on our process. And I think that's the key component here, is that you're hiring us for the process because what you've seen. And if you want what you've seen, then you need us to allow us to take that process all the way through. So doing some of that work, I don't recommend it. It just doesn't seem to pan out well in my experience. You spoke of structural silicone in a couple places in the past. Very little info out there on this topic. Can you elaborate on where and when you use it? I feel like I may have made that up, but I don't know. And I'm talking about the word structural silicone. What I meant by that, and I'm sure you guys have seen an Apple store. And typically, at least the ones I've seen, if they're freestanding structures, you have these large panes of glass that are essentially the whole facade. If you get up close to them, you're going to see two glass panels, and there's going to be a silicone joint between them. Well, that's what I mean by structural silicone. It's being used for water stopping, but it's also holding the panels together and in plane. So what we've done, we're using silicone in a structural manner. And, and I think maybe my glass guy used the word structural silicone, but essentially we're using the silicone to hold the glass panel into place. So we're setting it in silicone. We're not just using a small bead of silicone to prevent water from getting into the channel or out of the shower. We're using that to adhere the glass to a surface, and typically it's a recessed glass channel. I think of our Project 152, where we had floor-to-ceiling glass that was buried in the wall as well. That was all set in silicone, and we then came back and then put a bead of silicone around the entire panel to hold it in place. So we're using it to structurally hold that glass. So that's what I mean by structural silicone. And then we have a comment, Dead Nuts plaster, or Dead Nuts coplanar plaster, is the stuff of bearded theorists and pubescent architects. The reality is buildings move, shift, tilt, swell, shrink, and sink. So good luck with all those looming callbacks for the never-ending cracks. Man, just no support from this guy. I'm not... You know what? I appreciate the good luck. I do appreciate the good luck with all our looming callbacks. But I think we're missing a really important point here. We're not ignorant to the fact that buildings move and shift and swell and possibly sink and tilt and all these things. But going into a project thinking that and then building with that mindset, it's like, then why would we hang cabinetry on the wall level? It's like, you know what? The building's going to shrink on this side or tilt on this side. We don't have to put the cabinets in level. That's just not the approach we want to take. You want to put your best foot forward. Yeah, something could happen. I know of buildings that have sunk 17 inches on one side, but it's like you're not going to go into that building and say, yeah, this building shrunk, so like don't even bother bringing in the level, or don't bring the straight edge in. We don't have to do that. This building's not to that caliber. We're still going to approach these things at our very best, and that's what the client is asking here. So regardless of if we're making these walls completely coplanar, completely dead nut square and flat, it's no different than if we were to do a lesser job and do, a more traditional plaster job where things might not be completely coplanar or might not be dead nut square in the corners. We're still have the same inherent risk that the building might shrink, swell, sink, whatever else was in that list. But we're not going to go in there assuming that, because something's going to not be perfect eventually, then we don't have to be perfect. And and I don't mean perfect because I don't think we're perfect, but doing our very best. We're set out to do our very best on every single thing that we do, and we base that on the client's expectation. So if the client's expectation are dead nuts, flat and square walls, that's what they're going to get. And if that building twists and shrinks and sinks later, then we'll deal with it then. As always, guys, we appreciate you hanging out, checking out these coffee breaks. We will see you next week.